Happy Monday, everybody. As promised, we are here live on this Monday, coming at you at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time from the beautiful sovereign nation that is Canada. Happy to be here, fresh off the morning show weekdays with yours truly and Connor McKenna. Hopefully, you gave us a little bit of a tune in this morning between 6 and 10 a.m. If not, I welcome you to join the best, funniest, most entertaining morning show in Montreal tomorrow morning at 6, because I want to start on a good note. I want to start on a positive note because I've been positive for most of the season. I kept referencing how often I want to see the Montreal Canadiens play games that matter down the stretch. I want to see the Montreal Canadiens play with some pressure, with the understanding and the strong belief that pressure is always a privilege, and I'd love to see this unit, this group grow together with some meaningful games down the stretch. But as the season unfolds, it seems more and more unlikely that the Montreal Canadiens are going to be destined for the playoffs for the 2024-2025 season. I mean, it was an absolute crusher. As maybe you watched me on Sunday morning live. I like to join you every Saturday, every Sunday at 9:30 a.m. live. And we knew when we were here together talking about all things Montreal Canadiens getting ready for the Anaheim Ducks game on Sunday afternoon, that the out-of-town scoreboard on Saturday night, while the Montreal Canadiens were chilling in the California warmth, got absolutely decimated by the out-of-town scoreboard. And lo and behold, if you're just waking up on this Monday, getting through the fog of the weekend, and then wondering about, oh, hey, what's going on? I had kids and I had a wife and I had a very busy life. I didn't have a chance to soak in all the Montreal Canadiens action from Sunday. Well, here's the very realistic point of view around the Montreal Canadiens as it relates to everybody else in the Eastern Conference. Montreal picked the absolute worst time to find their previous poor form from late October into early November, as Montreal, after losing in Anaheim on Sunday afternoon, dropped their fifth consecutive game. They are one loss away from equaling their longest run of futility here, which was October 29th to November 9th, when Montreal lost 6 in a row. Yes, it's 5 in a row. And as you can see here, everyone from the Rangers to the Islanders to the Red Wings zipped on the Autobahn, hugged that left-hand lane, and just blew right by the Montreal Canadiens like they were driving a four-cylinder Geo Metro, while everybody else is driving AMG Mercedes. And Montreal with 53 points. Pittsburgh and Philadelphia now 1 point back of the Montreal Canadiens, as the harsh reality, I think, ultimately has set in. Are we back on Team Tank? Are we now looking at the Montreal Canadiens through the lens of it's time to focus the energy and the attention on who exactly are the Montreal Canadiens going to be looking at, needs and voids that need to be filled, and the best way to do that, arguably, is through the draft in 2025. We shall wait and see, because it was very interesting here as we say good morning to Costa. The wheels are squeaky and are wobbly on this Habs bus. I mean, it's almost at this point where it feels like everybody, the wheels have fallen off the bus, and the Montreal Canadiens are rolling on bare rims down the highway with sparks coming out the back, because this team is lost. This team had an opportunity, in my belief. And again, I remind you back to the live show we did together on Sunday morning, when we reference that heat map from the Anaheim Ducks at 5-on-5 defense, and how poor they were. One of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the NHL, when it comes to protecting the middle of the ice in their own end. And Montreal, to their credit, got on the board first, got on the board second, and didn't get on the board again, giving up 3 unanswered goals to the Anaheim Ducks and Alex Killorn, and Montreal loses in a 3-2 final. So there are a couple of key points I want to get into. Right off the hop, I want to talk about Arber Xhekaj. I want to talk about Arber Xhekaj's decision to fight Johnston Sunday in Anaheim, right? And we'll remember when the Montreal Canadiens were, shredding the Toronto Maple Leafs on that now infamous Saturday night, where I think we can look back on that, and my partner Connor McKenna has been very consistent on that front as more or less the bookmark of why it went wrong and why it went sideways for this Montreal Canadiens season, when they blew a 3-0 lead that turned into a 7-3 loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs on Saturday night. Montreal really hasn't been the same since, and I understand they won 2 games after that Saturday night, but more or less their swagger, whatever momentum they had built up for themselves, vanished in a hurry. But when we talk about Arber Xhekaj on that Saturday saying thanks but no thanks to Ryan Reaves' request for a fight, I personally think all the criticism that Arber Xhekaj probably heard about not living up to the code, this unwritten code that fighters abide by, where you more or less have to do the other guy a solid and then it's an IOU type situation. And I think Arber Xhekaj suffered from the amount of criticism that he got for not fighting with Ryan Reaves on that Saturday, and he got criticized. And I think that's why he took the invitation when his team was up 2-0 and decided to fight Johnston. But what I don't agree with is that was the TSN turning point in that hockey game, that by Arber Xhekaj deciding to greenlight go that fight, that meant you gave all the momentum, all the energy back into the Anaheim arena on Sunday, which was not the case. I mean, that arena, that ambiance as Anaheim was mounting their comeback was about as exhilarating as a chalkboard. It was so flat. But I can't sit here and tell you that, Arber Xhekaj's decision to fight at that point in the hockey game was a turning point, because I have seen that opinion shared across social media in the aftermath of Montreal losing their 5th in a row. Understand this, the fight happened. There was half a period left. There was an intermission, and then Anaheim came to work, and Montreal didn't show up to work for the remaining 40 minutes of that hockey game. And that in itself obviously is a problem, because as we spoke about, I like Arber Xhekaj when he's playing the role of the 5th or the 6th defenseman on this version of the Montreal Canadiens. Where the Montreal Canadiens run into trouble is when you're asking guys like Arber Xhekaj to step up and level up his game and play a position that he's not perhaps good enough at this point of his career to play effectively. And you saw it on the Alex Killorn goal that sealed the deal for the Anaheim Ducks, where, Xhekaj's got an active stick. He's trying to be aggressive, but he just keeps backing up to the point where now he's in the dot, and it allows Alex Killorn, who's obviously has a high hockey IQ at that moment, as he goes in tight on Montembeault, rips a shot, 3-2 Anaheim, and that's the final. So, I'm not looking at it through the lens of the TSN turning point was this, and it involved Arber Xhekaj. No, the Montreal Canadiens, full stop, right now, are a mess. They are a mess. They have lost whatever direction they were headed into, and I do not know why. I think I have an idea. And I'll tell you about that idea in a second, but I don't want to get too far behind on the comments. So thank you for joining me on this Monday, just past 11 o'clock. We're up to 44 live viewers right now. I mean, it's a fall off from the numbers we usually get on the weekend, but that's totally understandable. It's back to work Monday for everybody. So while you're here and I have your attention, please just give the video a like. It helps move the needle a little bit as we say good morning and an early afternoon to Mark. The bus is just early on its route to the Stanley Cup. We can expect plenty of bumps in the road as this rebuild continues. Good perspective, Mark. Andre, good morning. This run has been really important to see the level of commitment of each player. And I guess we found out we lack depth severely. Good comment. Thank you, Andre. Back to Mark, who weighs in about Demidov. He'll be here to give the bus a bit more zip next season. In the meantime, I'm hoping for a top 8 pick this year so we can add another elite forward. So does this give you comfort? Is this a nice warm blanket wrapped around you when you're freezing cold because the Canadiens are stinky poo again? That as of right now, the Montreal Canadiens, if the draft were to happen today, Montreal will be drafting 11th and 18th overall. That's where it stands today. Back to Andre. Yeah, they look gassed out, bruised and beaten. So maybe also learn to fine-tune their game and not get into this situation. Valley Guy, what's going on? They gave us all this false hope. And we say good morning to Aces Cafe, proud member of the Shaun Starr membership community. We got a private members-only event coming up soon. They are playing down to the level of their opponents, just as they play well against good teams. So interesting perspective from my boy Aces Cafe. So let's talk about, where the Montreal Canadiens are for a second and why I think they have not shown us good results, right? And that's why I don't think, And Ace, obviously, I respect your opinion, but I don't think the case of Montreal playing down, playing up to the opposition is a realistic point of view today. Because when we go back to that January 18th game, right, when Montreal was up 3-0, lose 7-3, they beat the New York Rangers in overtime and then played Tampa Bay and stole a win from the Tampa Bay Lightning. But we started to see little bits and pieces, right? When Montreal went through, 4 straight games beyond regulation where they went 3-1 and ultimately lost in a shootout, if memory serves me, to the Dallas Stars, right? But we started to see little cracks in the armor. And then the 7-3 loss happened on Saturday. Then we get to the Rangers. They beat them in overtime. They steal the win over Tampa Bay. And this is where I don't subscribe to they play up, play down. They lost at Detroit. Detroit kicked their pants. They lost in overtime to New Jersey on another mental mistake. Bad pass, breakaway, scores, game over. They get throttled by one of the best teams in the NHL and the Winnipeg Jets. Minnesota on Marc-Andre Fleury night. Another basically non-compete game by the Canadiens. And then Montreal is up 3-2 in Anaheim against the team that has the worst coverage in the middle of their offensive zone, and Montreal disappears for 40 of 60 minutes. So the reason I think we're seeing what we're seeing here, they're a small team. They're young, they're small, and they do not play physical. Okay? And when I mean physical, I'm not looking for people to be stupid. I'm not looking for the Canadiens to have a team filled to the brim of Matt Rempe's of the New York Rangers. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm getting at is when you look up and down the Montreal Canadiens roster, and I will get into Kirby Dach and I will get into Patrik Laine, and I will tell you why I loved Martin St. Louis calling out 2 players specifically, Laine and Dach. I love why he did it. I'll tell you in a second. But the Montreal Canadiens recognized early this season that they were perhaps soft, and the perception of them around the league was that they're a little soft. And I believe, and I know, and I've communicated this before, and I don't want to open this box again, but the Montreal Canadiens deliberately tried to correct that perception that they're soft, don't play tough enough, that you can hit one of their better players. And if Arber Xhekaj or Jaden Struble isn't on the ice, what's the answer to that going to be, right? So Montreal identified that perhaps that was an area that was true. It wasn't just gossip. They looked at it internally and said, okay, let's do something about it. So, Montreal being one of the richer teams in the league, knowing that scouts and consultants and coaches don't count against your hockey ops salary cap, Montreal goes out, they bring in a bunch of consultants, right? They brought in Mark Bureau to work on faceoffs, yada, 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 which I like. It's proactive, right? They're proactive. They identify areas and figure out, man, maybe there's somebody else that can help us in that area. I like that, right? So I have no problem with them thinking that they want to be tougher. They want to have a tougher attitude. And we saw that in bits and spurts, right? Josh Anderson knocking guys around, Kaden Gooley playing physical, Arber Xhekaj being Arber Xhekaj, and down the list we go. But did that not take a toll on this team? I believe it did. And they want to talk about tough culture. They want to talk about having a tough attitude. It's all fine. But what's happened now? There are how many games left? 30 games left on this season? 30 games left on this season. Is it not plausible, everybody, that the Montreal Canadiens, who, again, let's go through their top 6 together. Who's a force to be reckoned with? Who on the Montreal Canadiens today do you believe most confidently that could be thrown over the boards and say, you know what? Watch me take this game over. Watch me impose myself on this shift, right? I think the Montreal Canadiens are a very skilled team. I think Cole Caulfield is the closest thing they have to a legitimate number 1 player. And by legitimate number 1 player, I mean, I can see Cole Caulfield joining the number 1 line in Florida. I can see him. Okay, maybe they wouldn't take Kyle Connor off the number 1 line in Winnipeg. It's the best line in hockey, probably. But more or less, I would say Cole Caulfield is the most legitimate first line player this organization has, right? I like Nick Suzuki. I think he's a very high-end player. I think he's exceptionally skilled. But Juraj Slafkovsky hasn't grown into his own skin. There isn't a moment where Juraj Slafkovsky will physically impose himself. So I'm not being critical of the Canadiens making it a point of emphasis that they want to have a tough attitude. They want to have a tough culture. They don't want to be perceived or be known as a air quotes soft team, right? So they tried to do something about that. And I believe collectively, because of what's happened, the run they were on, the teams they played, the crisscross travel, the excuse me, the physical element, all of that added up. It's not one singular thing. It's a collection of all of those things, I believe, that has added up to Montreal looking and playing the way they are. They are small. They're not physically tough enough up and down that lineup. And I don't believe right now Montreal has a single player on this roster that could go over the boards and take a game over, drive the net, be hard to play against all of the time. I think they can do that sporadically, bits and spurts, right? One game they look good, but then ultimately in the collective, over 52 games, the Montreal Canadiens have hit a wall. And nobody's hating. No one's looking at 48, looking at Laine Hutson. Like, can both things be true? Can we look at Laine Hutson and say, okay, he's hit a little bit of a wall, but he's also still a very good player. Like Laine Hutson does not look like the same 48 that anytime he was arguably out there, he was one of the two best players on the sheet of ice, end of sentence. That really hasn't happened in a minute, right? So all of those things, in my opinion, it's enough evidence for me that points me in the direction of this team is small. This team is not ready for the full-on marathon, grueling 82-game season where you got to be physical, you got to be mentally sharp, you got to be mentally tough, all of those things, that the learning curve is steep. And I myself failed to recognize that very early on. I did not believe Laine Hutson was going to hit a wall. I saw enough counter punches from Laine Hutson, different looks that he was giving, that led me to believe that he was going to be good. If he hit this wall in his first year as a pro, that he was going to be able to, with his hockey IQ, navigate those choppy waters and go to safe harbor, right? But that hasn't happened. There has been a wall, and Montreal has been incapable of running through it. And as bad as that is, because when the Canadiens were going and beating Vegas and beating Colorado and cracking Tampa Bay and going toe-to-toe with Dallas, yada, 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 I mean, it was awesome. And what's happened here does not take away from what happened then. In that run of play from December 28th that began with a Jakub Dobes shutout over Florida, it does not take away. But what it teaches us, all of us, myself included, obviously, in this whole thing, when we talk about lessons being learned, Montreal has to be able to work together in order to win hockey games. That is the common thread sewn throughout this 52-game sample size that we're reacting to together. Is that when Montreal and Brian Wild told Connor McKenna and I this morning that the Montreal Canadiens have one of the best fourth lines in the NHL today, right? So it's just, for me, a pattern that when Montreal is playing together and they have depth scoring, 1 through 4, literally, Montreal's chances of winning a hockey game are very strong. And then when it gets away from that for a variety of reasons, injury, fatigue, travel, etc., the individual part of this roster is not good enough. It's not good enough. And does that change next year? That is up for debate. And speaking of that, let me tell you that coming up this week on the show, I will be in conversation with Marco D'Amico from RG Media. And one of the things we will talk about this week is, and ask the question is, Ivan Demidov good enough for the Montreal Canadiens to make the playoffs next season? Or do the Habs need to go out and find this type of player for them to level up? So that's what I will be doing with Marco D'Amico, along with some other topics of interest, in my opinion. We'll talk about the race in the Eastern Conference. We'll look at Ottawa. We'll look at Detroit. We'll look at Buffalo, saying, is Montreal keeping up? Are they ahead? Are they behind? And then obviously the other bit of interesting news remains, now that Montreal is falling down the standings here, what does that mean for Jake Evans? How come we haven't heard anything on the Jake Evans front? So that is all coming up this week right here on the channel you're watching, the Shaun Starr Show on YouTube. So that's my spiel. That's how I feel about that game. And when the Montreal Canadiens give it up, they give it up fast and furious, as they often do. 2 goals in 40 seconds, and Anaheim was back in the fight. And then Alex Killorn killed the Montreal Canadiens because Arber Xhekaj just wasn't confident in his defensive zone coverage. He allowed a pretty good hockey player to get in close and have a prime scoring opportunity, and Killorn made the best of it. So we got more comments to react to today. Thank you for joining me live. I really do appreciate it. Please give the video a like if you have a second. It's just a click of your mouse button. And it certainly helps me a lot, no doubt, as that's where we're trying to do, grow this community and grow this channel together so we can have a good place where we can all get together and shoot the breeze on the Montreal Canadiens and get excited about this team and the path they're taking to rebuild this team to a path of consistent competitiveness. So, yeah, let's get going with some of the comments we have today. There's Rick Springhetti, who wants to talk about some issues here. The 3 issues for me are: 1, losing Goulet has forced depth defensemen to take on minutes they can handle, no doubt. Number 2, the second line is not good enough, so the first has to do it all, basically offensively and defensively. The other point Rick brings up here is the third and fourth line is not doing as good. Evans' shooting percentage, Heineman hurt, Anderson hurting, Gallagher seems to have run out of gas. So Rick, sums it up nicely and accurately. Josh Anderson is playing through an injury. We know that. Brendan Gallagher is also playing through an injury. We know that. So that takes us to what we saw from the Montreal Canadiens losing to the Anaheim Ducks, and the result that came with 2 players that you need to be better and weren't better and didn't really see the ice. So what you're seeing right now is an article I pulled up from rds.ca. And it's pretty cool, in my comments. For whatever reason, there's a good amount of people that like to watch this YouTube show from Australia. We know we have a few people from Sydney. A gentleman reached out to me yesterday from Canberra, talking about how he likes to follow the Montreal Canadiens from the land down under. So with that in mind, and I know I have a good amount of people in the United States of America that are watching this channel too, maybe I could put a tariff. Can I put a tariff on the YouTube show where I force USA hockey fans to pay an additional 25%? I'm kidding. The tariff war is everything everybody's talking about around here. So I felt an opportunity to jump into the fray. Okay, so here's an article again I just pulled up from rds.ca, and I had it translated to English. I can read it fluently in French, but just for everybody that maybe that isn't from our neck of the woods, I know most of you are, but there are some people that aren't from the best province in Canada, Quebec, FYI. And this is what I loved, okay? So Google translates this from French to English. It's usually not that great. And the article basically is, with Montreal down a goal in the third against Anaheim, where was Patrik Laine? He had a 32-second appearance in the third, finished with only 12 shifts for a total of 10.5 minutes. He had 1 shot on goal and was a -1. Second line center, Kirby Dach, also used less often than usual during the loss, playing less than 12 minutes. So that decision made by Coach Martin St. Louis. The obvious follow-up is, why, Coach? Why? The answer, I didn't think Laine was helping the team at the time. It's a decision to make. Kirby Dach, Coach, why? Why wasn't 77 out there in the third period? Top 6 players, you're down a goal, Coach. Explain that. Coach says, overall, it wasn't a game where I felt he helped us one way or the other, as he expands on the utilization of his second line. And to that I say, bravo, bravo. Bravo, Coach Martin St. Louis. I loved Martin St. Louis deliberately moving the goalposts from when the Montreal Canadiens lost 6 games in a row, that this team, right, at that time, going back to October, November, when Montreal lost 6 games in a row, he didn't really individually call too many people out. But get what happened? What happened? The Canadiens got a lot better. They showed us something. They showed promise. And when Montreal was winning 13 of 17 games, starting from December 28th until that Saturday night when the bleep hit the fan, when they lost 7-3 to Toronto, it changed the expectation. It changed what we thought, all of us collectively, right? You know, you want to do good and this is what brings it home for me. And I stand by this to this day, that when Montreal was coming from behind 10 out of 13 times and winning these crazy games and beating who they beat and all this stuff, didn't matter home or away. Montreal was, for a moment in the sun, the best team in the NHL. And what did that do to how I thought about the team, how you thought about the team generally? Not all of you, because I see here Brian in the chat this morning. Brian saying, looks like you agree with my take last week. The team is too small. So not everybody was forecasting the future correctly. And I'm guilty. I didn't forecast the future correctly, right? If I did, I probably wouldn't be here. I'd be in the Caesars Palace in Las Vegas on the Strip doing nothing but cashing winning tickets. But nevertheless, we're here together and I'm happy to be here. That when you're winning games and you're beating who you're beating, regardless of the venue, it's only normal that you change the narrative and that the expectations move. As I said last week, the Montreal Canadiens are a living organism. Things change and things evolve all of the time, in good and bad times. And so when the Montreal Canadiens were doing what they were doing, what brought it home for me was everything seems sustainable. They weren't doing anything crazy, right? It wasn't Raphael Harvey-Pinard, ridiculous shooting percentage. It wasn't Yaroslav Halak beating Pittsburgh and Washington in the playoffs. It wasn't Mike Camilleri having the reincarnation of Maurice Richard in the playoffs, scoring goals all the time, right? Like, even when they made the playoffs during the COVID times, it was like kind of weird, the circumstances that got Montreal into the playoffs. So when I look at how Montreal did all that damage in December after Christmas, I was like, yes, I am buying into what you're selling me, because it was the goaltending had got ironed out. Alex Carrier brought stability to the defense. Patrik Laine brought more depth up front. Kirby Dach seemed to find his confidence in his game again because Laine was out there. Alex Newhook was contributing. Nick Suzuki, point a game. Cole Caulfield on pace for 42 goals. Like, there were all of these things, and I just named a whole bunch of them off the top of my head, that when I add them up, I'm like, yes, sustainability. I believe it. I believe the foundation is being set. But now we look at it through the lens of what's happened to this team. And when we flatter the Canadiens and talk about, wow, they're so good and doing all this damage, they were doing it collectively. And then it dried up. And it takes us to the Patrik Laine, Kirby Dach decisions in the third period. And I love Martin St. Louis having accountability. You want to make money? You want to be a big player? You want to be a star? You want to have McDonald's commercials? You want to have people talking about you? You want to be invited on Spittin' Chicklets podcast? Well, guess what? Not everything is rainbows and gummy bears here. Sometimes it's a pile of doo-doo. And right now, Martin St. Louis didn't think that Kirby Dach's game and Patrik Laine's game were good enough. And that's how you do it. That's how you manage a game. That's how you manage a roster in the NHL. And I've been critical of MSL. Sometimes I get the perception that he's overmatched, but I didn't think he was overmatched yesterday. I liked his decisions on the ice. I'd like to see him now evolve a little bit, because, you know, the line combinations aren't working again, because he's comfortable mixing and matching defensive pairings somewhat on the regular, you know? That's right. And we have people in Taiwan. Hey, Mark, what do you do in Taiwan, if you don't mind? I'm curious. Lots of good comments as always. I believe I have the smartest hockey audience on YouTube. Good morning, Austin. They lost to some good teams and lost their confidence. They need to get hot again, or they're going to miss the playoffs. I mean, is it controversial to say I don't think the Canadiens are going to make the playoffs? Like, I've been consistent. I didn't really believe Montreal was going to make the playoffs. I didn't think they were going to fall this dramatically. And as you know, for longtime viewers of me or listeners of me, you know I've been very consistent on beating I want them to play meaningful games in March. And whether that leads them to a playoff spot, whatever. But I want them to play games that matter in the standings in a good way, not in a bad way, like draft reasons, bad way. I want them to play games that matter, you know? And Brian Wild did the math today. And do you know what the math is? Because it's 52 games played now for Montreal. So the arithmetic is simple. 82 minus 52 is 30. There are 30 games left. You want to get into playoffs? What's Columbus prorated to have this year? The Blue Jackets are prorated to have about a 93, 94 point campaign. Where are the Montreal Canadiens in the standings right now? They need 53 points. So let's work with a round number. Montreal needs 40 more points minimum. 40 more minimum to win a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. And there are 30 games left, and they need 40 more points. So 60 points up for grabs, 40 they need. How is that going to work? How do you see that happening? And I know the saving grace is the Montreal Canadiens have gone through the gauntlet. The hard part of their season is over. They have one of the easier schedules down the stretch. But when you're not beating the Anaheim Ducks and blowing 2-0 leads to the miserable Ducks, hard to feel optimistic about this team having an easy schedule, right? The abundant yogi, Michael Sedell. Heineman is the only consistent physical player with skill. I like that statement. As well, we're playing with unnatural pairings on defense. Fair. As well, the second line has been patched together. Newhook has to go. I mean, that's a pretty good take. Well summarized. Hello, Roland. Everyone playing perimeter hockey right now takes less effort when you're small. 13 was a giveaway machine last night. Yep. Yeah, they all struggled. I thought Juraj Slafkovsky had bad habits. I thought Arber Xhekaj. I thought a bunch of guys did not make winning decisions on the ice in Anaheim yesterday. Am I worried about Juraj Slafkovsky? No. Am I disappointed? Yes. Yes. I expected a little bit more. He's regressed. I think he's on pace for 45, 46 points coming off a 50-point campaign last season. Good morning, Steph Howard. Good to see you. I hope you're feeling better. Steph Howard admitted he ate some Wendy's chili over the weekend and got food poisoning. Damn, Wendy did my guy dirty. Steph, I actually fell asleep in the third. See, I told you, the guy's dealing with, he's probably pooping himself like crazy. I'm happy with this season if it ends tomorrow. I'd like to see Reinbacher finish here and join Laval for the playoffs. That's a pretty good take. Obviously, I mean, the Reinbacher path to the Montreal Canadiens has to go through Laval, which, by the way, dude, the Laval Rocket, my guy, let's go. How about Pascal Vincent rolling with the hot goaltender, Caden Primo? Primo's 8-0. The Rocket have won, 5 in a row? And unfortunately for them, the Rochester Americans are right on their heels, man. The Americans have won 4 in a row. The Rocket have 59 points. The Americans have 58 points. The race for the top of the North Division should be a fun one down the stretch. Ace, I know Suzuki is your guy, but I still have to cut him some slack on his leadership ability. Yeah, I like Nick Suzuki. Nick Suzuki's turned into a little bit of a potty mouth. You know, I think it's like 2 of his last 3 games where post game he's using profane language. That's they're not happy. The Montreal Canadiens are not happy. That's a good thing, obviously. I mean, it would be a banner red flag waving in the sky if the Canadiens were like not angry. You know what I'm saying? Laine benched. He was lazy on the play. Listen, Laine was awful. Laine, as I've said before, and I keep saying that, like I said. I don't mean to say that. I don't mean to come across as an "I told you so" guy, but Laine's pace is not good enough. Are you ready for my hot take of the day? Here's my hot take. Patrik Laine is a third-line player. Patrik Laine is the forward version now of Marc-Andre Bergeron, in my opinion. And listen, Maybe he's still suffering from the knee injury or whatever, but I cannot play Patrik Laine a boatload of minutes in a 5-on-5 heavy game. I don't think he's fast enough. Like from the get-go, I find him, there were, especially in the first few games back, I'm like, he was dragging the play. He was dragging the play. And then, bits and spurts, he had some pace to his game, but it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. Patrik Laine is a third-line player. And they put him out there on a power play, Marc-Andre Bergeron style, and see what happens. But again, I just want to be consistent here. I love the fact that that Martin St. Louis, no favorites here, man. Remember at the beginning of the year, people, he doesn't hold the same guys to the same standard all the time. Well, he did yesterday. Patrik Laine, what did the coach say? Let's put it back up on the screen. Let's put it back up on the screen so we can all see it. I'll make myself nice and small so everybody has a better version of this. Here's the coach. I'll highlight it here. Explain head coach Martin. I didn't think he was helping the team at that time. It's a decision to make. You're damn right it's a decision to make. It's one hell of a decision. Here it is again. About center Kirby Dach, less than 12 minutes. Overall, it wasn't a game where I felt he helped us. So good on you, man. Good on you. No free passes here. No passengers. Either get on or get off. What's up, Mario? Shaun. Guhle is a very good defenseman, but he's always hurt. He missed the last 3 seasons. No, listen, I get it. It is a problem. It is everything you said there. Everything you said, I don't disagree with one word, Mario. Kaiden Guhle is a very good defenseman. Yes. But always hurt. Yes. He missed the last 3 seasons with injuries. Yes. Undeniable. The first thing that makes me like you as a player is, are you available? Are you reliable? And as much as we like Kaiden Guhle, a leader, a future leader on the Montreal Canadiens, good luck, bad luck. He's hurt. And I understand, what are you going to do? He cuts himself with his own skates against Winnipeg, and he's got a lacerated quadricep. But he's not available. It sucks. What's up, Brad? You got to think the conversation is starting that the players say they don't want to sell off the trade at the trade deadline, but they better get it in gear. If this losing continues, they might as well get assets. Well, question. Like, and we'll talk about that this week with Marco D'Amico on the Shaun Starr show. Like I just want to remind you, right? We'll talk about, is Ivan Demidov enough for the Canadiens to make the playoffs next year? We'll also touch on the subject about, do the Canadiens need this type of player, that type of player? Who are those guys that we believe Montreal needs to bring into the family in order to level up? And we'll talk about why there's no news. Why isn't there news around Jake Evans? What's going on? What's the date? February 3rd today. March 7th is coming fast. So all of these topics are coming up on the Shaun Starr show this week, starting tomorrow with Marco D'Amico from RG Media. What's up, Charles? Proud member of the Shaun Starr show. Shaun, why do you think Mailloux and Beck joined the team in California only to not play Sunday? They have now rejoined the Rocket, so I'll explain it to you. And I talked about this yesterday on the live stream. Owen Beck and Logan Mailloux are the 2 representatives of the Laval Rocket for the AHL All-Star Game. The AHL All-Star Game is being held in, drumroll, California. So while those 2 All-Stars were there, the Canadiens called them up. They get an NHL paycheck for the day, and then they did a good thing because Montreal plays Tuesday and Wednesday against the Sharks and Kings, that they loan them back to the Rocket so they can play in the All-Star Game. Yeah, Zeph, Laine looks slow as molasses. It's been a problem. Mark, Laine needs to get into better shape next season in a contract year. Listen, I like Patrik Laine. Like I said, I would keep him as a power play specialist. If Patrik Laine was comfortable and cool, having, a 4-year kind of commitment from the organization at, I don't know, $4 or $5 million a year, I wouldn't blink on that. And that's the thing too. Like, I was careful, I mean, Mark, if that's your perspective, it's your perspective. I'm an out-of-shape 46-year-old white guy who works on local AM radio. I'm not comfortable talking about Patrik Laine's conditioning. I know he would skate circles around me. That's a fact. But, and I'm doing something about that. I'm back to the gym, baby. So get ready. A chiseled, handsomer version of Shaun Starr is coming at you soon. Can you guys handle a sexier version of me? I'm sure you can. You'll be fine. But there's part of me that wants to give Laine some benefit of the doubt that the injury to his knee is partly responsible. Partly, how much? I don't know. Sometimes I'm too much of a fan. I give these guys too much of a break, you know. What's up, Steph? I agree with the Laine take for now. I'd love to see him have a whole summer off with training and see it. Yeah, that's fair. I'm on board with that. I'm on board with that. Rick agrees with the Laine and his lack of pace. He can't play with. No, there's no way, man. There's no way. Laine right now is a third line player. Oof, $3.5 million. I don't know about that. Like if Patrik Laine today said I'll sign 4 years, $5 million, so $20 million for Laine, I'm in. I would sign that deal today. I would. And probably big reason why I don't run a hockey team. All right, Rick, thanks for being here today. Rick's got to go hit the ice himself. Good on you, brother. Thanks for being here. Shaun, we put on the white gloves for Laine, but this is not a way to repay the ones who gave you a chance. Now, listen, I mean, let's not make it personal. Patrik Laine is going through it for a second, you know, and the reasons why, I don't know. But again, I love Martin St. Louis. Like you said, we put the white gloves on. Martin St. Louis took the white gloves off and threw them in a pile of crap, and then put them back on and said, "Here's Patrik Laine." Not good enough. Not good enough. Couldn't help us one way or the other. Good on you, Martin St. Louis. You know, this is a very smart hockey audience in Montreal, and Zeph and a whole bunch of others here. They see Patrik Laine and they know it. You're not going to fool people in Montreal. You're not going to feel Montreal. Ha! He thinks he can be sexy. Meh. Think I am, baby. You think this is a face for radio? This is a face for YouTube.com. I've never been called sexy in my life. Home account. They're tired, man. This team is young and needs a break. I agree. Don't disagree with that. Brian, at this rate, the Canadiens would be drafting top 10, possibly top 5 yet again. If the draft came today, if the draft came today, Montreal would be picking 11th and 18th. And they more or less, with 30 games to go, they need 40 points. If they're going to make the playoffs this year, like Columbus is prorated to finish with, 93, 94 points, Montreal needs another 40 points for them to get there. So, you know, with 30 games to go, what is that, a 20-10 record, more or less, just to keep it simple? You see the Montreal Canadiens going 20-10 down the stretch, or a combination of a 20-10 down the stretch? Not so sure, everybody. I'm not so sure. Bonjour, Robert. Patrik Laine himself felt uncomfortable getting player of the game because of power play goals, but we ignored it. Dude. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't remember when Laine was often very, very hard on himself. He was very, very harsh critic of himself when he was scoring goals and talked about he thought he played garbage. That's a good memory, Rob. Thanks for bringing that to the chat today. Laine looks like he's skating in the mud. I don't think Laine actually likes hockey. I feel bad for him. I don't know. Like, he seemed like, you saw his face when he was introduced to the Bell Center. Remember when he scored in Toronto against Toronto on that Saturday night, and he had his hands up and he was like, "Come on, give it to me." Like, that looked like a guy who loved the ambiance of Montreal, and by all accounts, he was singing the praises of the Montreal market to Nick Ehlers of the Winnipeg Jets. I could tell you that much. So I don't know. I think there's some evidence that we watch on TV that leads me to believe that that he does like it here, and he likes to play hockey. I could be wrong. I don't know. In my opinion, it's an educated guess from me. What's up, Ace? Name one player on this team that has the moral authority and respect to get in someone's face like Laine's and tell them to step up. Marty can't do that. What? What do you mean? What is that? The moral authority? Like Martin St. Louis, like Martin St. Louis goes into any locker room on planet Earth. He gets instant respectability. Like Martin St. Louis, moral or not, MSL has every bit of authority to go into and say, hey, Laine, it's not good enough. Like Martin St. Louis said that about Patrik Laine publicly. I would bet you he does not shy away from saying something along those lines to him directly, especially when they pour over the video. Or if Laine goes to his coach and says, hey, what was the problem? Why didn't I see the ice in the third period for just one shift? Like Martin St. Louis has the clout, the credibility, the resume that backs up his decision to go in and say, hey, Laine, that wasn't good enough. And here's why. I want you to be better. I need you to be better. You have to be better. Like Martin St. Louis is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's an undrafted Hall of Fame Stanley Cup champion, MVP. And the other end to that is, and I'll put it back up on the screen so we can see it again. What there was, I don't have, like I said consistently here, I have no problem with the messaging. It was accurate and it was honest. It wasn't demeaning. It wasn't offensive, in my opinion. I think Martin St. Louis handled that perfectly. Player Ace Cafe. Well, I mean, that's why you have Martin St. Louis. Like, this is one of the youngest teams in hockey, you know? I know the coach likes to let his team go on auto tune there and let them be on autopilot, I should say, but yeah, see, Andre MSL was pretty honest in a non-demeaning way. Clear as he could be. Well said. Raj, on the positive side, every team and most players have ups and downs all year. Us Hab fans lose patience quickly. This team is still on track from a rebuild perspective. Yeah. Yeah. Um, there's a couple of different directions we could go there. And I think we'll see with Ivan Demidov what Ivan Demidov does. Um, and I know, listen, we're riding the wave of the ups and downs of this Canadian season, but um, yeah, okay, I'll get there with you. The rebuild is still on track. Yes, it's not off the rails. No, that would be, I think, a too dramatic, the tip of your nose kind of take. I just wonder about, like, what's the first line going to look like moving forward? I don't, who does Demidov play with? Is Nick Suzuki the number one center for the foreseeable future, or do they need someone else in that spot? I don't know, and that's why, Raj, I gave a slight pause to your answer. I was kind of thinking in real time about the rebuild perspective, and I'm like, yeah, okay, there's still some serious X factors that need to hit. There's no doubt. Brian, Habs are tired in capital letters. Really? Why are their opponents not tired? At least when they play the Canadiens, they are tired now. I hate to see how they look if they ever got into the playoffs. I mean, it's not, tired, I'm not thinking so much it's physically tired. I mean, these are finely conditioned, finely tuned athletes. I think the mental grind is starting to hit them a little bit. Lane Hutson starting to hit him a little bit. The lack of depth, right? Like, think about it for a second. Like, what if you were, let's say, in an office setting, and you're working with a team, and for whatever reason, one of your teammates just doesn't do their share of the workload, or when they do it, like, you got to double check it and make some corrections, yada yada yada. And you're just trying to get into a rhythm, and then this person comes up with their project, all done, boss, and you look it over, you're like, oh my gosh, you're not really done, right? That's what I mean by the grind, the mental fatigue of, oh, this is happening again. Oh, they didn't score when they were out there. I guess I got to do it now. Or the goalie let in a softie. Oh, here we go again. I think it's the cumulative effect of mental fatigue, right? And this team is small, man. This is a small hockey team. And sometimes you want to play tough, you want to play big. Uh, they're learning how to manage energy output so that, yes, when Brian and your hypothetical of they get into the playoffs, what are they going to be like? Hopefully, this is what we're talking about, learning lessons from um, this poor run of play again, where they're winless in 5. Their longest winless streak was 6 from late October into November. I don't mind Suzuki as the number one center as long as we have a 1B added to the team. And I would guess then Kirby Dach is probably not the answer you're looking for, right? So on and on we go. Yes, no, by no stretch of the imagination am I deploying any sense of panic button. It's just, I guess, like a lot of people have pointed out here, the reality of a young team rebuilding, doing some heavy lifting has ultimately set in. And the Montreal Canadiens, perhaps if we thought had actually turned the corner, right? Had they turned the corner, it was fun. It was fun. It was exciting. I loved it. Hashtag no regrets, right? Um, Learning what it's like to win those games, go into opposing arenas and win those games, the feel good vibes. And now, obviously, what's happened here, what's the leadership group telling themselves and making sure that they go through the process of building on better habits that lead to better results on a more consistent basis. So thanks for being with me today on this live stream on this Monday, the rare weekday live stream, but I was happy to do it because the Canadiens played and lost again, and there were a lot of things I wanted to talk about with you. And thanks for the subscriptions to the channel, and make sure you like this video. Turn your notifications off because we're going to have some really great stuff on this channel coming up all week long. We'll talk about the race in the Eastern Conference, teams like Detroit, teams like Ottawa, teams like Columbus. Where are they? Montreal in terms of keeping up with those teams? Is there anybody else Habs Nation should be worried about? Is Buffalo a team Montreal should be worried about? We'll also talk about Ivan Demidov on this team next season. Is that going to be good enough to get them to the playoffs? And what are the wants and needs of the Montreal Canadiens? What do we think? What do we think the Montreal Canadiens need? Do they need a certain type of player? Are they missing a certain type of player? I want to talk about that and more with Marco D'Amico. So that is coming up all week on the Shaun Starr Show. And again, the Montreal Canadiens have back-to-back games, and it starts tomorrow at 10:30 at San Jose, Wednesday night at the LA Kings, and then they're home for their traditional Super Bowl weekend matinees with home games against New Jersey and Tampa Bay Saturday and Sunday afternoon, respectively. So then they're off for 2 weeks. So that's what we have to look forward to. Last word goes to my boy Ace. I want to see someone get pissed when they lose. The post-game interviews have been what they've been. Ace, I hope you got to watch some action at Pebble Beach when the Montreal Canadiens were letting us all down. Rory McIlroy wins his 27th PGA Tour event. That's pretty awesome. I mean, that, you know what I mean? A long time you watch that 14th hole at Pebble. This guy goes driver 7-iron, puts it to 25 feet, and drops an eagle putt to lock down and secure the victory at Pebble. What a fun golf course. I love that golf course. I love when golfers have to go out and shape shots and they just don't have to bomb and gouge it like some boring ass TPC course that you got to move the ball, you got to flight it, hit it through your windows. And Pebble Beach brought it and more. So yeah, my boy Ace out in California. Hope you got to watch some Pebble Beach and watch Rory win. The PGA Tour needed a Rory McIlroy win. All right, that's it for me live for this Monday. Thank you so much. We reached well over 100 people watching. We're at 111 right now, 54 and a half minutes into our live stream on this Monday. So thank you so much for being a part of this channel as we continue to grow on a daily basis. And stay tuned. We got fresh content coming up all week long. Ivan Demidov, is he good enough to make the playoffs? And what type of player are the Montreal Canadiens missing? What type of player are they missing? Let's answer those questions. Let's tackle those topics all week right here on the Shaun Starr Show. Have a great Monday. Enjoy your families, enjoy your friends, eat well. And to that Meg guy, call myself sexy, you're damn right.